And it is now time for us for a spiritual centering moment, and Cheryl has a surprise for us all. After that, Leo will continue with leading the rest of the conversation. Thank you, friends. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rudy. I'd like to ask you to join me in a musical prayer. Join me. I hope this song touches your heart and inspires your spirit. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Oh Lord, come by here. Someone's praying, Lord, come by here. Someone's praying, Lord, come by here. Someone's praying, Lord, come by here. Oh Lord, come by here. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful.
Amen. Thank you, Cheryl. God bless. I'm Leo Lynch, pastor, First Church in Santa Ana. The conversation on race has been a space where I've had the opportunity to dialogue in real time with brothers and sisters who consider themselves not people of color. It was from our honesty and insight that I found breadcrumbs to keep me on course when the hungry, anger world around me, around us, were famished. Silence, complacency, indifference, hatred, misplaced love, and what's good for me and mine would have kept each one of us at an unholy difference, at an unholy distance under the guise of Christian love and love for one's brother, sister, one's neighbor. And just imagine that. Those who endured, those who stayed, we return to weekly conversation, moving beyond looking for proper words, beyond the correct opinion, beyond wanting an exchange that will make us feel good, beyond looking to validate our own prejudice belief, beyond joining just to want to take something away. We return weekly to offer what was available in our own godly storehouse. We experience being put upon so we could begin to claim our own baggage, our own luggage, and we dare to permit our vulnerabilities to shape our own words. And we earnestly stumbled over stuff as it rolled out of our lips. Some weeks I didn't have the words to say. I would have been consumed by the many untruths put out by the media and the many truths that was put out by the media that would accompany another person of color being killed. Our dialogue found a space where compassion was wrought and forged. It was as if Yahushua was looking ahead beyond the Garden of Gethsemane, and he called those people who he trusted friends as they abandoned him. Those who left in our meeting, the presence was felt. Those who stayed as well, our present or lack thereof, told a story. It told my story. It told our story. So in closing, what is your story? At this time, I'm going to invite Cheryl Farrell to follow. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Leo. And thank you again for the storytelling reference, because that's near and dear to my heart. My mantra, my prayer is to tell your story. Sharing all sides of who we are is a path to anti-racism. When we know each other beyond skin color, age, and zip code, we are more likely to show empathy and care for one another. Over this past year of weekly conversations on race, it has reminded us that we have more in common than we are unalike. As a Black woman of a certain age, I have shared my story about jogging, walking, or just being in places while Black, where I am foreign in my own neighborhood. Sadly, it took viral social media exposure of Black lives lost to systemic racism to enable these conversations, to inform and to inspire. Although the weekly conversations on race have a Zoom host, the meeting facilitation has been organic. We have ground rules for productive discourse, but it was purposeful to let conversations go wherever attendees wanted them to go. At times, that freedom was frustrating for me. Weekly news events about police shootings of Black people or political episodes have prevented healing of racial wounds. And still we met each week to have our conversations. Our group talked about the impact of certain words, assumptions, privilege, coping mechanisms, and denial. It hasn't always been tidy. Yet I am grateful for this space that includes people who don't agree with me. Thankfully, we have prayed together, keeping God in the mix. The weekly calls created a tight UCC community to share and hear personal stories. I found solidarity with people who face racism or any other type of ism. I have met people of faith who I would have never known otherwise. The struggle remains real, but it's not hopeless. I wholeheartedly invite others to join these conversations on race. The more perspectives, the better, because we're all in this together. Thank you. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Marcia Hoffman, and congratulations on your anniversary. Marcia, you there? Yes.
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes. I am a retired UCC DOC minister, and I'm a member at the Altadena Community Church UCC and Pasadena Mission Gathering Church DOC. On the Monday before Juneteenth, one of our new UCC members and I traveled to the car rally in downtown Los Angeles. White clergy were asked to circle the speakers at the rally as a symbol of protecting them. On the way home from this rally, Jesus and I decided that we needed to hold stand-ups for Black Lives Matter in front of the Altadena Community Church. So on Juneteenth, we started them and stood every Friday, going through the Friday before the election. We also held a stand-up for Asian and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. Our Wednesday conversations on racism gave me an opportunity to have conversation with people I had not previously met, and also to renew relationships that I have had for quite a long time. Leo Lynch, who I feel like I have known for a very long time, and I started having conversations at other times, and that helped me to realize that I needed to do something that I'd been meaning to do, and that was to connect with white people for Black lives. I will have my first orientation this Sunday. And I wanted to do that because on this coming Wednesday, Leo invited me to attend Black Lives Matter event with him. And so I wanted to do my orientation with white people for Black Lives because I cannot be an official member of Black Lives Matter. I will post the resource in the chat just in case others want to start the process of joining white people for Black Lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. At this time, we're going to invite Lynn DeHaan to share her story. Lynn?
Looks like she still may be connecting to audio.
Can we ask someone else?
Yes, Lynn, we're going to circle back to you.
Yes.
Let's see, I'm sorry, Paul Clay, are you available?
I am here. I'd love
Okay,
to.
great. All right, thank you.
Yes. My name is Paul Clay. I'm pastor of Hillcrest Church in La Habra Heights. I'm a white pastor who served mostly white congregations for most of my years. And most of my
You need to unmute.
there. Okay. I thought I'd unmuted. That's better.
You did.
But I got remuted. Okay. I'm not sure where to begin. But when I started seeing the Black Lives protests, I really needed to connect somewhere, and I needed to talk to people across lines. I needed to work on myself. I wanted to support those who carry the burden of racism. I wanted to encourage those who were involved in activism. And so I was very thankful and appreciative to find the conversations on racism. I've been committed to fairness and justice for all of my life. And I've been working on this for a long time, but in many ways, I'm still a beginner and I'm still learning. And I'd like to share just a few thoughts today that came to me just a few weeks ago, partly because of my involvement with this group. And it starts out with two questions. One is, what is racism? The other is, where is racism? And racism, it's definitely on the street where somebody is mistreated. It's definitely where somebody is disadvantaged because of their color. But it's not just in Black communities. That may be where a lot of the hurt is, but that's not where most of the cause is. And part of it is in institutions and in cultural patterns and in politics and economics, but a very large part of it is also within each of us. And when we look within each of us, we find that part of it is in the way we think, part of it is the way we feel, part of it is in what we were taught before we knew we were being taught. Part of it is in our perceptions, our assumptions, things that we never even think of until we're challenged. And my main thought is that to overcome racism means different things in each of these realms. That in each of these realms, there are steps that need to be taken. And in each of these realms, racism is all part of the same thing, but in one case, it's a mental pattern, and another, it's a political pattern, and the way to change these things is different. And on a personal level, it goes through levels of becoming aware and making commitments and learning to care, and then going through the whole thing again. And perhaps that happens on institutional levels as well. But when you work on the institutional level, you realize that what you're trying to do is bring about change in persons. And when you work long enough on yourself or talking to another person, you realize that it can't happen without changes in society and institutions. So whatever you are working on right now, whether it's personal or political or institutional, that is a part of the picture and it is valid. And you will discover that as you work on one part, you need to work on another. I offer this partly as a framework for a way of understanding and sewing together the stories you're going to hear in the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. At this time, we're going to invite Skip to share. Skip?
You need to unmute.
Thank you. Leo, I appreciate that. Thank you. I just saw today from a Disciples of Christ church on a newsletter that I'm on, a quote from Abraham Heschel. He said, "Some are guilty, all are responsible." I think that's very good. I'm sure a lot of white folks, as I grew up, thought, gee, my parents are nice. We never used the N-word in my house. My parents were sympathetic with how blacks were treated. My mother especially thought the way Europeans treated Native Americans was awful. So anyway, so I grew up in this, what I thought was a liberal household. And I did. But this group has shown me that doesn't mean I don't have any racism in me. And it's funny how that comes about. I think Paul said something interesting just a moment ago about you need to work on this and then realize you must work on something else. But I found myself realizing that I think I've been trading on white privilege. And I don't think I would have realized that if it hadn't been for this group. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leo, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Skip. Thank you so much for your candor. We'd now like to invite Dorothy Crockett up. And congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you, and welcome to each of you. My presentation is called A Review with an Invitation to You. And I'd like to begin by invoking the presence of the Spirit by quoting Joshua 1, verses 5 through 6. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous. Following the annual gathering, a weekly conversation on race was set up. As a concerned white female and ordained hospice chaplain, I wanted to know more. It raised questions in my heart and spirit. What can unfold with this group? To begin, sharing my background may be helpful. As a child, I grew up in a family with 10 children on the south side of Chicago. In a mixed-race neighborhood, most European races were there, Asians, and yes, Black Americans. This all seemed to be a natural part of growing up. We didn't speak about racism in my family. However, what I witnessed in joining this Zoom group is that many of our Black siblings are uncomfortable in joining due to our white privilege. One was present, yet refrained from showing his face. One day, from the shadow of the Zoom camera, we could hear his sonorous voice relay his pain. He sang a spiritual expressing his life's pain as too heavy. He cried out to Jesus to remove it. I mentioned that that morning I intuitively sang a song that God gave me, Forsake Me Not. Our group continued our Zoom conversation. Later, in closing, he thanked me and stated that I blessed him. My arms got goosebumps. How the Spirit moves as I relate to him what a blessing he is to me. What I experienced is a year of increased awareness, a growing compassion, and a desire to know more about our Black siblings, as well as the other participants. Yes, I read all sorts of books and watched a list of movies and documentaries about Black history and the like. Yet in these meetings, we became vulnerable to each other. We prayed for each other, we cried and laughed together, and we grew as a community. It truly is an invaluable tool towards understanding. My attendance at these weekly Zoom conversations on race meetings is to listen to all who are present, to be sensitive to what is said, to hear, to be present, to be a companion, to be a friend. My goal is to learn and relay that I care. God made us to be in community rather than isolation. Will you consider joining us? As our UCC denominational invitation goes, no matter who you are or wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. Your voice will be heard. Your voice will be joined by others. Your voice may be the one that changes the world. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dorothy. At this time, we're going to invite Lynn DeHaan to share. You want to unmute yourself, Lynn, for us, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I apologize. I have background noise. I've tried everything and I can't get it to improve. So I'll be very brief, shorten what I was going to say. But I just want to give you a reflection of a layperson. I'm from Community Congregational Church in Chula Vista. And this experience has been a mind-opening time for me. I grew up and had it really good. I'm going to give you just a few words of my history to help explain the extent of my extreme white privilege. I didn't know how lucky I was, but I was. I grew up in a Midwestern town, small middle class in Wisconsin, and everything went well back in the 1940s and 50s. I even had a fortune of a wonderful student exchange program to the country of Greece in the summer of '57. And that was 1957. And prior to that, I had an opportunity to visit Little Rock Central High School on another high school exchange. And that was the very year of the desegregation efforts. So I was a lucky one. I was able to go to college in Southern Indiana, which was a small liberal arts church-related school, and I majored there in history. When I came out, I worked for a social agency and the school district. And in each case, I was involved working with people, but never really thought about race, unfortunately, even though I saw segregation all around me. When I moved to Southern California in 1969, I wanted to say how lucky I was to arrive as an immigrant out of state, but there were no questions asked. I got an apartment, found friends, joined a church, and got a job near the Mexican border in a minority school district. And there I worked for about 30 years. I really had a good experience. We were a diverse community, and everything was really quite good. So I didn't think much about race, but I was amongst people of all colors and beliefs. Although I have to admit, in the school system and so forth, I think we were more liberal. When I retired, I learned the rest of the world around me was not all quite that liberal, particularly as the election of Obama occurred. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And then the next election, unfortunately, was one of the saddest. So through my church, Community Congregational Church in Chula Vista, we formed a social responsibility committee, and we've been active ever since, although we were somewhat restricted due to this pandemic, working on issues of immigration, LGBTIQI things, and gun violence, things of that nature. But when I saw this conversation on race on the Southern California website, I was immediately called to join, and it was something I could do despite the pandemic. This experience has made me a different person. I have a better understanding of racial issues for myself. I'm learning to give up some of my old thinking and ways and values, which are all reflective of the white dominant culture, which I was a part. I'm apologetic, but I have to live with it, what is. At first, when I came to these conversations, I was afraid. I felt intimidated by the learned clergy around me. I was afraid to speak up because I was becoming aware of my own ignorance and guilt. I'd finish each session and want to crawl under the covers and put a pillow over my head. I didn't know what I could do, but I felt a compulsion to continue and have gradually felt way more comfortable in this group, and I will say always accepted and encouraged by the leadership and the participation of the participants. I struggle with the question of what now? What can I, as an older person, a lay person, do? I think I've learned that change occurs very slowly, and there's no one way to do anything. I hope and pray that we can together as a church in a conference continue talking and do what we can to try to make a difference or to get out there and do what we can. And I put in a special call to we older people who are retired that we can do something also. We can join, we can act together, and hopefully make change in racism as we go forward. My father reminded me of this old proverb many years ago. You cannot do a kindness, or I'll insert work for justice, too soon, because you never know when it will be too late. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And your participation is always appreciated. I also want to thank you for this extra effort you've made to attend while at a family event. You've mastered technology to deliver your inspiring words. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Carl Hilbert. Thank you, Carl.
Hi, I'm titling this My Life COVID-19 by Carl Hilbert. Like many people, I've spent a good bit of time during the COVID pandemic mumbling and grumbling. And I even actually spent some days shouting unkind words at people on the TV not wearing masks. But mostly I experienced a lot of frustration at not being able to do the things I used to do as a UCC clergy community organizer. I really miss not being in the streets, protesting police brutality, working for criminal justice reform, and advocating for racial and economic equity and justice. I had a real sense of failure in not doing what I knew I should be doing. I seek guidance in my life through prayer and using my mantra song, Spirit of the Living God, arise afresh in me. After a 3-day focused meditation, I began to sense a path that might lead me to do what I could do under the circumstances. I was following Black Lives Matter events closely. On the Friday after that meditative time, I took a new sign to our weekly peace vigil around our flagpole on our lockdown Pilgrim Place campus where I live. My sign read, Black Lives Matter. We are one in the spirit of love. With no awareness by either of us, a fellow peace vigiler arrived at the flagpole with a large 5x7 folded BLM flag. Long story short, we got enthusiastic support from our administration at Pilgrim Place to do a safe, restricted event on campus. The Black Lives Matter flag was raised to permanently join our US and UN flags. A testament of support ad for BLM was run in the Claremont Courier, and a contribution was made to BLM. You can view that event as a link soon to be posted on the chat. A second coming of the Spirit was in the communication you've heard referred to already from our conference office, which highlighted the emergency resolution, quote, to end police brutality and systemic racism against Black people of America. It was passed at our last June's annual gathering. In addition, it described the group you've heard about, Conversations About Race, a regular weekly Wednesday Zoom from 1 to 2 p.m. as a time for people to meet and have very meaningful conversations on this important subject of race. Next to my weekly church experience at Claremont UCC, this is my most meaningful COVID and ongoing experience. This wonderfully diverse group of people has become a most outstanding sounding board that I have been blessed to be a part of. Hope some of you looking in might join us. Many thanks to my sisters and brothers in this great group, and wishing all of you viewing this peace and love in the struggle. Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Be blessed. And this time we're going to invite Karen Faye to share.
Thank you, Leo. I'm Karen Faye. I'm a retired clergy and a member of First Congregational Church in Glendale. Vilified, devalued, dehumanized. Blacks, Indigenous people, and people of color all have stories of racial injustice. For me, our stories about discrimination and racial disparities, and our stories about hate and historical trauma might be different, and they may have similarities, but they are not to be equated, ranked, and rated. Our story may be the same or different, but together we are called to be a part of the transforming power, faith, and love of the church. I'm a member of PAM UCC, Pacific Islanders and Asian American Ministries. PAM is deeply rooted in nurturing racial equality, speaking against racism and addressing social justice issues, and being a voice for the oppressed. Black Lives Matter is a PAM issue. Together, PAM stands with our brothers and sisters, saying together, all Black Lives Matter. In 1986, rooted in South Africa's struggle against apartheid, amidst injustice, oppression, hostility, and discord, the Belhar Confession states, and I quote, "God, in a special way, is the God of destitute, God of the poor and the wronged. The church as God's possession is called to stand where God stands, namely against injustice and with the wronged." During our Wednesday conversation, we've affirmed one another as we gain confidence to speak out and share our stories about discrimination, inequities, and abusive powers, about being wronged and how wrongness has been accepted in our communities. So I invite you to join us on Wednesdays to hear and share your stories about standing where God stands. We are called to stand where God stands against injustice and to stand with the wronged. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen Faye. We want to open this session up for question and answer. And also, if you have any insight you want to share, we want to invite you to do so at this time.
Folks, you're invited to unmute yourself now. Please don't all speak at the same time. But we have a few minutes for comments from the floor. What did you hear from the folks that just spoke, or how does this affect you in your own personal situation? Cynthia, are you you unmuted yourself?
Just because you told us to.
Oh, well, then make a valuable contribution. Thank you.
I think we've become comfortable with silence because most of us were a little reluctant to speak out when we first joined the group, but anybody is welcome to say what's on their mind, and it will be heard, and we will hope that you will come back and speak some more.
I'm Jack McCall. I'm the moderator out of Bloom in the Desert Ministries in Palm Springs. Paul said something that rang true to the concerns we've been having as we've done the white privilege workshop that was put together by the National Setting. We've done a couple of book studies, How to Be an Anti-Racist, White Fragility. And yes, we are mostly white, we are mostly old, we are mostly retired. And we do want to be involved, but it's always, what do we do? What do we do? And I think you touched on it, Paul. It's both our introspection, is be involved wherever and whenever we can. Don't make the simplicity of that or the complexity of that hold you back. Because it is so easy to be complacent. Oh, I'm not a racist, and pat yourself in the back and move on. That ain't enough. It's getting people to register to vote. It's discussing the issues. It's bringing one more time another book for the group to read that's uncomfortable. You know, it has been challenging for most of us to accept the reality of systemic racism. Because as someone who has lived with that privilege his whole life, it just is kind of there. You don't feel it, you don't see it, it just, well, that's the way it is, isn't it? Well, yeah, but it doesn't have to be. One of the most profound things we did, and I think it was a result of the white privilege workshop, we asked each person to look back over their entire life and pinpoint major events. I was born, where I was born, where my parents moved, and look at each one of those in the context of how did the fact that I am white affect that situation, and how did that advantage me? And when we dug into it, every one of us realized it started from birth. Most of us were born in hospitals that catered mostly to white, that had excellent neonatal care, even back in the 40s when I was born. My parents moved to a town in the suburb of Chicago where they still had on the deeds in 1952 restrictions, covenant deeds, that home could not be sold to Black people. What? You know, and as we started touching on that, it really sunk in. But then, okay, now how do I change that? What can I do as a single one person sitting out here, do something about that? And that's when you start seeing the effect of the financial institutions in this country and how money is loaned out. The homeownership being what the source of wealth of most Americans is, 60% of their wealth is a home, but how African Americans, Black, and people of color have been excluded from that market time and time again. How can you change that? Well, you can do things locally. Start knocking on the doors of your local banks. Start talking to your own personal financial advisors, things like that. Yeah, I'm privileged, I have those things, and they can do something about it. So it's like, whatever you can do is a step in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Jack. We could use that voice weekly, so make sure you come back. I think we have one more participant. Janice?
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. You know what? I think I'm going to wait. I've been really prayerful and discerning whether or not I would join this group for discussion.
Okay.
And I'm still being very prayerful about that. Okay, so I think I'm going to wait.
Perfect. Thank you. And it's not meant to make you uncomfortable, but we're all in our respective spaces. I think we're coming close to our 45-minute mark. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank those who shared their stories, sending out prayers for those who are normally with us, who could not share their stories. All of it has helped in this evolution. Everyone had something wonderful to say, but I do remember especially something that Carl mentioned, and that is, aside from his regular church service, this has become a type of worship space for us, and that has been the case for me. And lastly, I want to say that while this has been organic, you can't do it without a leader, without a leadership spirit, and we have that in Rudy. The calm, unflappable, spirit-filled, no matter how far we steered off the road, he was just calmly, gently sending us back. We are here in large part to Rudy, and I want to say thank you for your oversight and your prayers.
I would like to thank you all. I can't make it on Wednesdays because of all the rest of my obligations, but it was lovely hearing all of your stories and where you've come from and where you're going. It's been great.
Thank you so much. And Leo, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, I'll take us home. I just want to say thank you for being here. The silence for me has been a blessing, is a blessing. Even your silence right now. This topic is so powerful. It touched us in a lot of places. And what we found out when we started this group, we needed the space to process. And so we learned that it was okay. You know, for whatever reason, you don't want to say anything now and you're being reserved, you know, it's a blessing. So we just want to say thank you for joining us. Amen. And so as God move on your heart, we know that you're going to move forward toward being all God wants you to be, wherever he wants you to be. So in closing, God bless you and thank you for sharing with us.